Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular, the AWD1100 C# Programming Fundamentals class, I've been doing a series of video presentations based on the book for the class, which is Murach's C# 2015. I have done videos on chapters 1 through 6, and I'm now in the middle of chapter 7. I've been also doing a series of programs based on a mythical payroll application, those being done both in console format and in GUI format, but I've decided to step back for just a little bit and for now do chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in the PowerPoints. So, I'm in the middle, like I said, of chapter 7. And here we have code that checks that an entry has been made. This is kind of what I've been doing previously. All right, I did this, and then we jumped over and we did our try parse type of statement. All right, so notice we've got code that checks that an entry has been made. So we're checking here for one thing, and that is, was there anything in there at all? If it was empty, we're giving a message box telling them that that was that kind of an error. All right, and we're setting the focus. All that's checking is there something there? That's what we did in the payroll program, the payroll console, to make sure we had a value in for the first name, we had a value in for the last name. Then in our payroll console program, when we checked for hours worked and hourly rate, we did check to see if there was something there. But after we did that, we checked to see whether or not it was within range. All right, well, actually, we checked to see whether or not we could parse it. In other words, could we convert it? Notice it says try parse, which we haven't really looked at, but we will. All right, we've done a little bit of this. And here's code that checks to see if something is within range. Now, notice they've broken it up here. We could have said if it's less than or equal to 0 or it's greater than 1,000 and just had a generic message. But they're saying if it's negative, do this. If it's greater than 1,000, do this. Otherwise, skip them both. All right. Here's a method, as they say, that's checking for a required field. So notice if there's nothing there, you're giving them a message, you're putting the focus back, but you're returning false because this is returning a bool. Otherwise, if you get down here, that means there was something in there. All right, we're not checking to see if it's, in this case, we're not checking to see if it's the right kind or what it is, just was there something in there. If there's nothing in there, you do this. Otherwise, there was something in there and you do this. Here's checking for a valid numeric format. All right. So what does this say? If you're able to parse it, return true. Otherwise, you're not. It wasn't a number, so return false. There are a lot of different ways this stuff can be written. That's one of the things I believe the author is showing you in here. Here's a range check. This is more like I mentioned before, where you're checking it's less than a minimum or greater than the maximum, all in the same check, and you're having just one, as opposed to earlier when they did two different checks. Here's something, as it says, that's checking the validity. There are so many different ways of doing this. So this is saying if there's something in there and it's decimal and it's within this range. Okay, here's doing it as opposed to the way they showed it before, doing it with a bunch of different if statements. So here they were checking 3 conditions at one time. Here they're checking them separately. The advantage of doing it this way as opposed to this way, this is a little harder to read, but the other thing is, although all they're doing here is returning false, it would be totally possible for you to come in here and instead of returning or just returning false like they're doing, we could have come in here and we could have put in message boxes to give them more information on what they were doing wrong. All right? Here they're doing it yet another way. Good, bad, or indifferent, there are so many different ways of doing the same thing. And which one do you use? All right, I always liken this to when somebody says, who's your favorite child? You know, it's when you are doing this, which one should you use? Try one or more. Once you attain a comfort level, I just used one of them. All right, I have a tendency myself to do a lot of writing like this. Always? No. Depends on the situation. It really and truly does. So here's their code for the future value. So again, notice this is how they're doing it. If any of this fails, we have just one exception, just a generic. So we'll show the message, the type of exception, and the stack trace. All right. Here they're doing the valid data, but notice, whoops. So we've got the calculate in a try-catch. Here's the valid data, but it's not in a try-catch. Here's checking whether or not something is present or not, but again, not in a try-catch. So there are different ways of you doing the same thing. Bottom line. And I believe that pretty much is it for the chapter. Yeah, it is. All right. So when I come back, I am going to start on Chapter 8. And Chapter 8, as you can see right here, is going to be on how to use arrays and collections. So look at something a little bit differently. We'll be back with that lecture in just a couple of minutes.